Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. So I've been out on holiday for the last little over a week now, enjoying some nice, relaxing time away from the screens. No trading, well, very little trading. Some chart reviewing, but very little, and for the most part, enjoying some nice, cool weather, some beach, some sand, some outdoors. But I'm ready to get back to it. So I want to bring you guys an update on the charts, some thoughts around the action we've seen here in the last couple of days. Is this the bottom? Everyone's starting to get excited. We saw some pretty strong action here the last couple of days, so we will get to it. We'll take a quick look at the coin market cap. I want to recap some thoughts there. But before we get started, first, some quick housekeeping items. I have opened up the group for the next month, so if you're interested, go to nodeinvestor.com. You can find some more information about our alerts as well as the private group, the private trading group, and training in terms of technical analysis, videos, and some other thoughts. So go there to check it out, learn more at nodeinvestor.com. Now, looking at the coin market cap here, we're at $253 billion. We've had a nice little pump in the last couple of days here. I saw an article, it was kind of funny, the headline, it said, $20 billion comes pouring back into the markets. And guys, that's not how the market cap valuation works. $20 billion did not just enter the markets. If it did, $20 billion would have driven these markets much higher than what we saw. It's simply a valuation based on supply and the price. And so $20 billion of new money did not enter, but nonetheless, the valuations grew by $20 billion over the last couple of days on this recent action. Of course, Bitcoin predominantly drove a lot of that, but so many of the alts are just really beaten up over the last couple of months versus BTC. We'll look at a few names that are starting to show some life here. But if you look at the current dominance, continues to rise slightly. Bitcoin dominance now just shy of 43%. And I'm beginning to think that we're nearing a intermediate top in terms of Bitcoin dominance. And so if this market begins to show some follow through off of this recent low, I'm going to be favoring a lot of the alts that have really been beaten up versus BTC in terms of some of the trading and some of the intermediate swing trades that I will be doing. But for the most part, the last month has been a very slow month in trading. I did take a few trades along the way. Happy to say that June was actually a net positive month for me in terms of my trading, and I didn't do a single short trade. And so that's considering just some of the few long trades that I took along the way, some of the alt trades. But I was mostly in cash for the most part, but I'm starting to look at some of this now and thinking that we're getting close. I talked about a potential July rally a couple videos ago. I still think that's in the cards just because we're due for a little bit of a counter trend rally, at least more than the little bit of 10% bumps and little moves that we've seen here along the way, which have really been nothing more than just bear flags along the broader downtrend. So right now I'm looking for that. There's a couple of signs showing up that I'm thinking we may be getting close. Right now the market cap is trying to find some foothold here in the lower $200,000 range. This reminds me, real quick before we go in, just want to share a quick story. It made my day. It kind of put things into perspective here. One of the guys in the private group on the chat room shared a video. He said, hey, this video popped up, and it was a video that I had posted on April 30th of last year. Everybody was FOMOing. We were thinking, oh man, I just missed the boat. And in my video, Bitcoin had just crossed $1,300 and Ethereum had just crossed $75. And the title of my video was, Is It Too Late? And in that video, I talked a lot about market cap. During that video, market cap was $36 billion for the total crypto space. And I was talking about how we would see $100 billion. And I mentioned that that was a little bit more of a longer term number, but I thought we were still significantly undervalued from a asset class perspective. And wow, we've come a long ways, guys. And it just kind of made my day. It really puts things in perspective. I was thinking, wow, that was last April where we had just, over the prior year doubled. Bitcoin was up, to 13, and everyone was going crazy. And Ethereum, man, went from $9 to 75, and good times. And now here we are, right? Bitcoin's at $5,000-$6,000, and it's the end of the world. Ethereum's several $100s, and there's $200+ billion market cap, and there's blood in the streets. So it's just real interesting to see how things change. And of course, we all went through this parabolic rise and increase, and so that puts it into perspective as well. And especially if you bought near the top, you're certainly feeling the pain. But anybody who's, when you think about it, anybody who's been in prior to November of last year is likely in the positive from a longer term perspective. So it's just real interesting to see. But let's get back to the charts here. So looking at Bitcoin, there was two things I wanted to note here. First, this channel that started in May that we've been in, this long downward channel, has been the area of resistance here. And it's really interesting to note that yesterday's rally paused almost exactly at the top of that channel. So we saw that pretty strong move, and that's where we saw the sellers start showing up, was right at the top of that channel. And so I've made a note of that. There's also another thing to note here. If you see, there's two lines on the chart here. These are two exponential moving averages. The blue one, the shorter term time frame, is the 10 EMA, which you guys know I use quite a bit. And the yellow one is a little bit longer time frame. It's the 26 EMA. And I'm showing both of them to make a point here. While the shorter one is still living below the longer term time frame, the broader trend is down. That is the easiest way to see what the trend is. You can see here where they cross, and the blue one is above the yellow one. The trend is clearly to the upside, and when they cross negative and it starts living below the other one, you can see the trend is clearly to the downside. And so until that changes, the dominant trend is still lower. Now we are starting to see a potential process take place, but we've not seen confirmation of that yet. So I just want to make note of that. So that's on the negative, still living below those key areas. Now on the positive, I've been talking about this bullish divergence on the RSI on the daily chart that has been showing up. So you can see the RSI continues to move higher even as prices continue to drift lower over the last couple of weeks. That's positive. The next thing to note is on the RSI, we have not been above a 50 on the RSI since May 10th. And so that is significant. So you can see that during this entire leg down, that 50 level on the RSI has not been breached to the upside. We've been living below that. Just confirms how bearish this market has been. Now it's starting to look a lot stronger here, and it's getting very close to confirming this divergence on the upside. And so look out for that. Right now, the current RSI is sitting right around that 45, 44 mark. If it gets above 50, that's going to be the first time in almost 2 months that that's happened, and that will begin to confirm this potential bottoming process that we're seeing. Now, is it the end of the bear market? I always ask that question because people seem to want a prediction every time, and the answer is no to that question. But from an intermediate, shorter term trading perspective, it would start to show some signals that the trend is changing, at least for the moment. We have a long ways to go before we're anywhere near confirming this bear market is done. And so that's what I'm looking at. Now on the daily chart, just zooming in a little bit more. For those of you that follow the candlestick patterns and some of that methodology, there's a couple of things to note here. Let me clear these indicators. Sorry about that, clicking around there. On June 24th, we had a high volume reversal here on that day, and that finished as what they call a dragonfly doji, which is very similar to a hammer candle bottom, except for this candle body is very narrow. I mean, this finished within a $30 range on Bitcoin, which is very tight. And so you saw that, but the implication is the same. It's a signal that begins to show that some reversal action is happening. Then we saw the retest of those lows, but we did not breach those lows, which were just shy of 5,800. And we saw that happen here twice, and that culminated in a bullish engulfing candle on the daily, also on above average volume, higher than the day before. So those are two very positive signs from a price action perspective, just showing that the support is starting to show up here around that 5,800 level. So let's take a closer look now, and this is the 4-hour chart. So zooming in a little bit, you can see we've continued to see this pattern of big quick rises in a very short period of time frame, and then just kind of sideways action, drifts lower. Then we saw this big down day here a few days ago. This was on some Tether FUD and some other news. And then yesterday, the big move happened here, and we saw some good follow through here. So on the 4-hour, and if you look at the 1-hour chart, you can see there was a little tiny flag pause, and then we saw some more follow through the upside. And since then, it's just kind of been sitting tight, letting these moving averages catch up. So going back to the 4-hour, I'm watching the 10 EMA as it approaches and seeing if price begins to drift and hold above that point. That would be positive. It could form a little bit of a bull flag in that scenario. The level of support to be watching now, though, is going to be this little consolidation here. That's going to be around that 61.50 50 area. I don't have it shown here on the charts, but looking at some other indicators for those of you that follow Ichimoku trading, this level also lines up on the shorter term time frames with some of the other support areas looking at that indicator. So it's kind of nice to see some cross confirmation of a key support area. So on the downside, if we continue to see the sell-off, that's going to be the level to be watching in and around that zone. If it gets much below that, that's going to really start to negate this move that we saw. Was this move a big short squeeze? Of course. I mean, that was the follow through, right? If you go to the shorts chart, you can see that lines up pretty good. We saw the big short covering followed through by another leg down of short covering. So that absolutely added some upside, and we're going to continue to see that, and that's just natural to see moves off the lows, especially when shorts open interest has risen quite a bit. But you can see the trend is starting to shift now, and it's starting to, over the last couple of weeks, come off of those recent historical highs on the short side. So near term, again, watch that mid $6,100 zone, and then on the upside, that channel trend line, which is basically where we paused yesterday, now a little bit lower today, is going to be the level to be watching as price resistance. But ultimately, this horizontal price resistance, which was significant resistance earlier in the week, right around that 6,750, 6,800 level, is going to really be the key level to be watching in the intermediate term, kind of going into the next couple of days. Let's take a quick look at some of the other names. Now, first I want to point out the daily charts. Now, there's been a handful of names that are showing some good strength here off of the lows, Power Ledger, 10x, 0x. So there's been a handful of names that are definitely on the radar. But when I just do a broader scan of the daily charts, they're still all around very much bearish in terms of relative to BTC. A lot of these names are very oversold. We're starting to see some names show some bullish divergence on the RSI, but just looking at the technicals, there's nothing indicating, hey, we're in a strong bull mode or the trend is confirmed to the upside yet. And so just keep that in mind. I know these are positive signs for Bitcoin in the intermediate term, but most of these alts are still very much in a bearish tone and a bearish trend. And so until we start to see that across the board, one still has to remain cautious. But if you zoom in a little bit, here's BTC, the BTC pair for Ethereum. And you can see here, just kind of zooming in, there is no upside confirmation yet, right? We're beginning to see maybe the potential of a bottoming process form here, but most of these are still living below key moving averages. The moving averages are still inverted, and a few of them, like I said, are starting to show some bullish divergence on the RSI. If you go to Litecoin, BTC, same thing here, just still making this series of lower highs, but you can see here across the lows, it's starting to form a little bit of a support zone here. And so until this broader trend is broken to the upside, you still got to remain cautious and give the broader trend the benefit of the doubt on the longer term time frame. Let's take a quick look at NEO. NEO BTC has been very oversold in this long washed out move lower here in the last couple of months. You can see it's been really accelerated to the downside, but trying to find some footing here. The RSI is showing some positive divergence finally on this most recent leg down. And so that's one I'm definitely keeping an eye on. NEO USD pair, it's really come off quite a bit, was sub $30 here. And it's still just right around that $30 mark, but it was trading at $28 here just a few days ago. And so that's, you know, the story for so many of these names that are just well off of their highs. NEO, don't have to remind everybody, was, you know, almost at $200 here at the early part of the year, and so many other names have seen a significant move lower just like this. But when you start to put that into perspective, right, and just some of the valuation resets that we've seen here in the last couple of months, it's making me pay more attention now in terms of some of the long-term names, right? We've gone from one extreme to the other where things were just so overvalued. There was just so much speculative, euphoric money being thrown everywhere. And now it's the complete opposite. I mean, everything is just so bearish, and you know, things are dropping lower by the day, and the target is zero, and we're going to go back to, you know, $50 billion valuation for crypto. And it, you know, it's just gone from one extreme to the other. And when I start to see that, I really start to pay attention, especially looking out for some of these names that I believe will be longer term winners. And now I'm starting to look at them and thinking it might be time to start doing some shopping here. So here's the name I'm looking at right now. This is basic attention on BTC pair. And you can see we had a pretty good low, and this one actually formed its ultimate low here in middle of June. It was one of the earlier names to start rallying. We've seen a pullback here, this most recent leg down, but it is making a higher low. And here yesterday was showing some positive action with some good volume action coming in off of this low. So definitely one I'm watching, has been one of the early movers in terms of coming off of the lows here. 0x is another one, showed some very strong action yesterday, was coming up on the alerts here as it started to move off of these lows, and you can see it's just holding its own, showing very well here. And on the daily chart, this one also held up for the most part off of this April low or the March low. Didn't quite pull back as many as some of the other names. You saw many names fully retraced the April bottom, and even more so in some cases. This is one that held up a little bit stronger versus BTC, and here in this recent couple days, starting to show some positive action. So one I'm keeping an eye on. Power Ledger had a strong day, very big moves, good follow through off of that first day from the lows. You can see this big bullish engulfing candle came off those lows and then just saw some big follow through, but you saw this big wick, and that's not surprising considering the size of the move in just 2 days. I mean, at its peak, it was up over 90% from one extreme to the other. So there is bound to be some profit taking happening there. You're seeing that pull in. So one I'm keeping an eye on here on this pullback to see how low this retracement goes and see if we can find a new base here off the lows. But definitely one that has had a stronger move here in the last couple of days. And finally, Cardano. Cardano showing some good relative strength off of these lows versus Bitcoin. Still marching higher, even in terms of most of these other names are still pausing. So this is definitely one to keep an eye on. On the daily chart, you can see, and so many of these names are going to have this pattern where they're trying to form a low, but you can see the most current candle is pausing right at the 10 EMA. And if just cycling through some of the names I have on my watch list here today, many of them still had this look. So until this really starts to change and confirm to the upside, got to remain cautious. But on the shorter term time frames, when you start to zoom in a little bit, the shorter term time frames are looking a lot more positive in the near term. So we're seeing that early stages of a potential transition happening. No need to rush and FOMO in just yet, but look out for more and more alts. If we start to see more names showing this type of action across the board over the next couple of days, next week or two, that's going to be very positive for the overall market. We've seen this in the past where names, especially the altcoins that are very oversold, begin to bottom out before BTC actually starts to confirm. We saw this in March and April where you had names like Cardano and EOS and ICX and IOTA really taking off a couple of days, even up to a week and a half before Bitcoin finally had that big short squeeze. And so I'm going to be looking out for more of this type of action. We start to see more names moving off the lows strongly and showing some follow through the upside. That's going to really start to show some signs that we're due for a little bit of a more sustained counter trend rally and not these little couple day bounces that we've so far seen over the last 2 months. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for over the next couple of days, guys. Want to give you guys that quick update. I will be doing a live stream on Monday, so look out for that. We will go through charts, do some more in-depth analysis, have some names ready, things you want me to look at. And until next time, guys, take care, everyone.